This module is again related to the financial integration, where we are discussing about various case studies in which we are observing different countries which have go through the process of financial integration through the foreign direct investment, and some of them remain successful to get the benefit of FDI, and some others were incapable to get any kind of benefit due to FDI, but they face different kind of problems and issues. So we need to understand the whole scenario through learning the lessons, whatever lessons we have learned through these case studies. So previously we have discussed about some of the benefits, some of the success stories or successful situations, which is the outcome of FDI, and now we are going to focus on the failures. The failures are not purely failures. They are just going to give us the idea, the way, the strategies, or the solution that need to be designed whenever we are going to face any kind of problem or issue or any kind of disaster. This means that these concerns related to the failures are giving a new way to open the new strategies or the solutions, so that those countries which previously faced different kind of issues and problems due to the FDI, new countries who are going to receive the FDIs, they should not face that kind of scenarios. So first of all, the financial crisis. The frequency of financial crisis has grown up. Many financial crises are going to happen recurrently, quickly, and that is going to be an alarming situation for the financial integration. It means there is some problem in terms of the institutions which are going to handle this financial integration process, the FDI, the capital flows. Therefore, here some regulations or some kind of strong financial institutional setup are needed. Secondly, if we observe the exchange rate instability, that is the most obvious situation in case of mostly developing countries. Their currencies are stable or facing more instability or losing their its value quickly. And this instability in exchange rate leads towards instability in the net capital outflows. The outflows or inflows which are coming, that are becoming unstable, and that is leading towards the balance of payment deficit. And if countries are in the balance of payment deficit, they have to take loans and they have to accumulate debts, and then they have to go to the financial institution to generate these loans or debts. And the financial institutions primarily include World Bank and IMF. They have their own conditionalities or austerity measures. And whenever these countries are going to follow these conditions or austerity measures, they are going to face another troublesome situation, because now their fiscal policy is going to hurt, and they have to increase the taxes and they have to cut down the government expenditures, and that is going to generate stagflation kind of phenomena, and that is going to create real sector business cycle or real sector damages. So actually it further is going to add fuel into the currency crisis, and then this currency depreciation is going to happen, and it further leads towards exchange rate fluctuations. So exchange rate fluctuations which initially happen, they become more intensified due to this whole process, and this leads towards the financial chaos. Actually, this is the whole scenario which actually evolved due to these instabilities. Second important thing is the structural problems, because low developing countries or least developing countries or developing countries as compared to developed countries, they don't have proper structural forms of their institutions. Their banking system is more vulnerable. Their bond market is not properly established, and it is going to face different kind of failure situations. International financial institutions are misallocating or misguiding sometimes, because they are not going to understand the proper scenario of that country's financial setup, and then they are going to provide that kind of guidance which is leading towards more damage or more instability. And then these financial institutions are going to give bailouts, and these bailouts mean the money which is going to be accumulated by the financial institutions, these are the savings of developed economies, so they are going to be misallocated in the developing economies to recorrect their economies. So all these kind of situation is going to create another problematic situation for the international financial institution, because they are losing their credibility as well. On the other side, corruption, it is the part of the whole system, and primarily it is more vigorous in case of developing economies, and it is to an extent controlled in the developed economies. So developing economies are facing more problems due to corruption as well. Multinational corporations or transnational corporations, their role is very much important with respect to the capital flows, because now if they are focusing on short-term returns, then they are going to create by themselves more instabilities in those economies, which needs these capital to establish their economies or make their economies more stable. So actually they are by themselves instrument. Sometimes these transnational corporation or multinational corporation, they became the instrument of instability by itself due to this, whenever they are chasing the short-term returns instead of long-term returns. So if we observe this whole scenario, the frequency of financial crisis, then you observe that different kind of financial crises have occurred over the history. So from 1929 to 2014-15 onward, different kind of crises have been observed by the world. World Wars, the crisis, Cuban crisis, oil shock, then 1987 crash, then technology bubbles, and all these are the scenarios which are going to create different kind of crisis. And then if we focus on United States, primarily because United States, their indicators are leading indicators. So whenever their indicators are going to change, world indicators are going to follow them. So financial crises are going to happen here, then second crisis, then Black Monday, then banking crisis, then dot-com crisis, then financial crisis. The frequency is quite high. They are showing that this high frequency is going to create by itself another problem for the developing economies, because whenever they are going to become stable, there is another international crisis which is going to hurt their stability process or their growth process. Then if we observe the frequency of systematic banking crises around the world, then dark area shows the crises were intensified 3 to 4 times these crises happened in this area. And if you observe this a bit less dark area, then at least two crises are across the world. Most of the area you observe face two crises. Then if we observe the banking crisis, this Latin American debt crisis occurred after 1980s to 85, and then around 1990s transition economies, they faced the crisis. Tequila crisis appeared in 1995, then Asian crisis around 2000, then Great Depression from 2005 to 2010, overall economic scenario, loss in the over economic scenario. So this means all these scenarios actually shows that frequency of financial crisis actually became very much dangerous for those economies which were receiving foreign direct investment, and through that foreign direct investment they try to stabilize their economic growth process, they try to stabilize their financial integration and growth process, and then the shock is going to hurt or damage these economies, and then these economies face another kind of financial chaos or another kinds of economic chaos, and then they are in doldrums. They are not in form of, or they have the incapability to manage these crises, therefore they are in real trouble. So therefore actually on the one side financial crises need to be controlled, and developing countries primarily need to be insulated through the effect of these financial crises. And third, different kind of support mechanism should be developed to establish their institutional setup, the developing countries' institutional setup, so that these institutions are so much strong, they must be strong to absorb these shocks. Therefore, that kind of scenarios need to be done if we want to avoid any kind of failure of FDI.